Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kimber. I'm from the University of East London. And today I'm going to present some preliminary findings from a 6-month follow-up study, which is actually part of my PhD. So in this study, we compared a Cigalikes and a tank system model and look at the effect on smoking reduction or smoking behaviors, satisfaction, craving, and withdrawal symptoms. So these are my disclosures. So the e-cigarettes varieties have dramatically expanded from first-generation e-cigarette model to second-generation and later-generation e-cigarette models. So the first e-cigarettes, also known as Cigalikes, are fairly similar to traditional tobacco cigarettes in terms of size and shape. And you have the later generation models, which are also known as tank system, which have more sophisticated features, such as allowing the user to adjust the power of the device. The first studies to explore nicotine delivery of e-cigarette found that compared to tobacco cigarettes, they had very poor nicotine delivery, and they failed to provide a satisfactory experience to the user. In contrast, later study found that tank system performed better, and they were really good at delivering nicotine, and they compared much better compared to Cigalikes models. And more recently, studies found that tank system not only deliver nicotine efficiently, but they deliver nicotine at level that actually match and sometimes exceeded those levels achieved after the smoking of tobacco cigarettes. And from this thus far, it appears that e-cigarette can deliver nicotine effectively. However, this can vary quite dramatically from between device types. A key factor in the efficacy of delivering nicotine and in providing satisfaction to the user is the way in which the e-cigarette is used. Experienced users, for example, typically achieve higher levels of plasma nicotine, craving, and satisfaction compared to naive e-cigarette smokers. And the way in which they do this, it's believed that they take longer and larger puffs compared to naive e-cigarette smokers, thereby actually drawing a greater volume of nicotine liquid. But there is also evidence that those naive e-cigarette smokers will tend to increase their puffing patterns over time, and by doing this, they can actually get more nicotine in their blood levels. So this long-term adjustment in puffing pattern actually supports the notion that the e-cigarettes require some practice to actually get satisfaction in the model and accept the device over time. Another factor to actually to influence how e-cigarettes use is likely to be accepted is the nicotine concentration present in the liquid. High nicotine concentration are often found to be associated with greater satisfaction, greater craving relief, and higher plasma nicotine levels. For example, in our lab study with Lynn Dawkins, we found that vapors compensated for the lower nicotine concentration by increasing the frequency and duration of their puffs. And so thereby, we actually concluded that most of the time, high nicotine concentration is preferable for some, at least when using standard tanks and atomizer. And this is further supported by a study by Dr. Farsalinos, who found that some users have to increase their nicotine levels in order to achieve complete cessation. Thus, although the use of the Cigalikes is in decline, and when we offered smokers a choice between a Cigalikes and a tank model, in a previous study that we did, we found that half of the samples said that they would like a cigarette that looks like a tobacco cigarette. Also, a recent survey from ASH said that 28% of smokers said they would try an e-cigarette again if it felt like smoking. So here, there is a sense that the appearance of the e-cigarette is quite important, not for vapors, existing vapors, but for smokers who may want to try the device. My second point is that due to the EU TPD cap on nicotine concentration, and with the new sub-ohming trend with vapors using very low nicotine concentration, albeit with certain atomizers and certain tanks, these e-cigarettes, naive e-cigarette smokers may be inclined, therefore, to use lower nicotine concentration. So it remains to be seen whether the use of low nicotine concentration is appropriate for e-cigarette naive smokers. So the primary aims were to compare Cigalikes versus a tank system and look at the effect on smoking, behaviors, craving, satisfaction, and other subjective effects, and looked at the effect of the puffing frequency of the device on smoking. I will also be looking at how the puffing patterns varies between devices and nicotine concentration. However, I will not be presenting this today. So in this study, we recruited 70 e-cigarette naive smokers, and we used a 6 and an 18 mg per mil nicotine concentration. We used the totally wicked mini curve tank system at the tank system model, and we started using the tech device. However, due to issues with leakages, we changed to the blue e-cig. But in the analysis, we collapsed both Cigalikes models together. So we used a within-between participant design, and all participants attended the first session and were asked to abstain from smoking an hour prior to the start of the study at each station. At the baseline session, all participants provided a saliva sample so we can add nicotine baseline levels. Carbon monoxide was collected at all sessions. We also collected data on the demographic data, the smoking history. We measured their motivation to quit using the motivation to stop scale by Robert West. We measured their nicotine dependence at every session using the Fagerstrom test of nicotine dependence, and craving and withdrawal symptoms were measured at all sessions. So participants were randomly allocated to a condition, and they were asked to use the device for 20 minutes ad libitum in the lab. We measured their puffing pattern, duration of each puff, number of puffs, and their interpuff intervals using video recording. And each participant at the end of each session were given a diary in order to record their cigarettes smoked per day and the puffing patterns, as well as their subjective effects. So how do they feel in relation to using the e-cigarettes? So the session was repeated at week 1 and again at week 2. So these are the results with all conditions collapsed. So as you can see, cigarettes smoked per day and carbon monoxide were significantly reduced at baseline, week 1 and week 2. However, this is less pronounced between week 1 and week 2. Whether or not this is due to some fatigue syndrome, I'm not sure, but people definitely decreased their smoking from the baseline to week 1. Nicotine dependence was also reduced from baseline to week 2. So here we can see that regardless, and there was no differences between conditions. So regardless of the device that they used, the e-cigarette actually reduced their smoking behaviors, reduced their smoking. So this is the result for the craving. So this is a change in craving scores, and the higher scores correspond to greater craving reduction. So craving reduction differed between devices at baseline, but there was no differences at week 2. Week 1 and week 2 was not statistically significant, sorry. And you can see that here, the 18 mg per mil and the Cigalikes performed much better at the baseline session compared to the tank 6 mg per mil tank. So here we can draw the conclusion that in terms of craving, the nicotine concentration is important. So here you can see that the higher nicotine concentration is associated with greater craving relief. The device is less important here. In terms of satisfaction, so here we can see that the tank system actually performed better at all time. So the 6 mg per mil and the 18 mg per mil performed better significantly compared to the Cigalikes model. So people actually disliked the Cigalikes system at all time. And you can see that the dissatisfaction with the Cigalikes actually worsens over time. And these data are based on the diary. So basically, this is the self-reported data that participants actually came back with in the lab. So at week 1, the 6 mg per ml was rated as the most satisfying, and at week 2, participants rated the 18 mg per ml most satisfying. But again here, you can see that the Cigalikes model again performed less well, the blue bars. So as for the differences in volume consumed between the 6 mg per ml and 18 mg per ml, although this was not statistically significant, you can see that the mean values here indicate that people in the 6 mg per ml condition consumed a greater amount of liquid. So the participants were asked to record their cigarettes smoked per day, per number, and their subjective effect relating to the use of the e-cigarettes. And here you can see that there was a positive relationship between carbon monoxide and cigarettes smoked per day, which provides some reliability to the self-reported data on cigarettes smoked per day. And you can see here that the more satisfying, the more pleasant they found the e-cigarette, the more they would use the e-cigarette, the more puffs they would take on it, but also the less they would smoke. So the fewer tobacco cigarettes would be consumed. And again, this is the result for week 2, and this is fairly similar to week 1. So the more satisfying they find the device, and the more they would actually use it, and the fewer cigarettes they would smoke. So in summary, so cigarettes smoked per day and carbon monoxide was significantly reduced over time, and that is regardless of the device that participants use. Nicotine dependence reduced also. The 18 mg per ml tank generally performed better, except at week 1, when the 6 mg per ml tank was associated with higher satisfaction. So the Cigalikes models consistently performed poorest on satisfaction at all time, but except for craving, which suggests that a high nicotine concentration are more effective in reducing craving. There is no difference between device types in terms of feel or taste like a tobacco cigarette. And daily puffing patterns were related to satisfaction and the subjective effect. There's a few limitations to take into account, the fact that the sample was fairly small, but also we rely quite heavily on self-reported data. The implications, therefore, are that e-cigarette use can help smokers to reduce their smoking, given that greater satisfaction is likely to increase the use of the device and reduce smoking. There is therefore a need to shift away from devices such as the Cigalikes, which do not perform optimally and do not provide satisfaction to the user, as this device actually may put off e-cigarette naive smokers of ever wanting to try the device again or any other devices. The e-cigarette did not differ in terms of feel or taste like a tobacco cigarette. Again, this put in question the usefulness of the Cigalikes models. A recent ASH service reports that 20% of smokers said they stopped using the device because it did not reduce their craving. So again, given the importance of nicotine concentration in alleviating craving, the impact of the regulations of the cap on the 20 mg per ml cap may be detrimental for smokers. People who are not vapors, not regular vapors, do not have any knowledge about submorphing or about not how to puff on the e-cigarette, but would just, when you give them an e-cigarette, they would just want to use it in the same way as they smoke. This may be detrimental to those people. So I'll finish here by thanking my participants and my supervisor, Dr. Kirsty Saw, Dr. Lynn Dawkins, and Professor Olivia Corcoran. So that's it. Thank you very much.